All right, the very first step that I would recommend when you start, okay? I quickly went on to my subject, went straight onto my paper. I would recommend for your group to do your grid work on a white sheet of paper and then transfer onto your surface. Now, reason is because this paper can only take so much, okay, erasure. Matter of fact, I was ideally gonna have you guys work in white, but I noticed the white sticks a little bit too hard to the paper. So I'm gonna let you do it in the black instead. And I would recommend highly, when you go to the real thing, that you work with charcoal onto this surface if it happens to be a toned paper. But like I said, I gave you options. I gave you options of pencil, I gave you options of pen, ballpoint pen, or you could work with charcoal, and I'm gonna demonstrate it, don't worry. But the biggest thing is the grid. Okay, now this is, you could say, the real grid, not the quick grid. Okay, this is what they've learned throughout time. Large scale murals were done this way, and people still work this way today, some, not all, especially if they're required to get an image from small to a larger surface. You could go about it quickly by using an enlargement device. But first step that you're gonna do is you're gonna have your image. First step is to measure your image completely. This particular image was 3.5 by 5.5. Now, of course, to make your life a little easy is that I would try to get rid of that 0.5. I would, if you can with your image. Let's say your image is 3.5 by 5.5. Okay, if by chance you can get rid of it, and how would you know? You take your ruler and you check, okay, if it was 3 inches, where would it lay? Would I be cutting off too much? For me, I said, no, I don't like the fact that I'd be cutting off too much, so I left it, okay? But if you can, try to get rid of it. And what did I do? This actually, like I said, was the image that I had here was a little bit over 3.5 and was a little bit over 5.5. So what I did is I just took off, I think it was like, yeah, I took off an 8 in almost both directions, just to make the measuring part easier, okay? Now, my image is, like I said, 3 by 5 by 5.5. That's what my image is. So if I did the math per se to find out how big I should do this particular art piece, if I do it 2 times bigger, it's 7 by 11. If I do it 3 times bigger, it's gonna be 10.5 by 6.5. And already by now you probably realize, you know, it's easier if you had whole numbers like that. 3.5 would be easier to quickly do the math. And then if it's 4 times bigger, it's 14 by 22. Now, I'm gonna tell you right now, the paper choices that you have, 12 by 18, and you also have 18 by 24, okay? Now, what did I do? Is I took the 18 by 24, which is this paper here, okay, this toned paper, and what I did is I went ahead and I cut off what I didn't need, okay? You could draw off, you could measure off, do whatever you have to do to get to the size that you need. So I decided that the largest one that I would do to take up my full space would be the 14 by 22. That would be the best to fill my 18 by 24, okay? So I went ahead and I cut off what I didn't need. Now, next step. I am now transferring what I have in this quadrant to here, this quadrant to here, this quadrant to here, this quadrant to here. Now, you could get a little pickier too. What could you do? You could go ahead And if, let's say, let's say I need a little bit, for instance, in this area here and this area here, there's a lot of information going on. So what will I do? I will use my ruler and I'd measure in that area to go ahead and find the half. Now, like I said, when you got these 0.5s, like, bear with me.
Teachers at this time.
All right, so because of the fact that I've got that 0.5 to worry about, if I take the 3.5 and find the halfway point, it came to, it's a quarter, it's 1 and 1, 2, 3, 3/4, and you could say a 32nd because of the fact that it lays in between the 16th. Okay, the 16th in between it is the 32nd, and you don't have marks for the 32nd on here. So what you have to do between here and here is to find the halfway point, which in this case, you have it's 1 and 3, looks like 1 3/4. So half of 1 3/4 would probably be, let me see here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What I do is I just check to see how many quarters were in it. So half of 7 quarters would be 3 point something. So 1, 2, 3, and the halfway point would be right, hold on, that is a little bit too, it would be right about here. That would be the halfway point. Now another thing too that you could do, you could physically just fold it. If you don't want to sit here and worry about the measuring part, you could literally take your image, cut it to that area, and do your fold, half and half and half and half. That would make life easy. And then you would do the same thing to your, not this paper, but the white paper before you transfer. I would say use the white paper and do half, half, half again, and then you literally, block at a time, will make it larger. Make sense? Okay, is there anybody confused about what I just said? Anyone? Okay. Yeah, either A, you will measure it off and find the half, half, half. And I would do it in areas that are more complicated. Like this might be complicated, this area might be complicated, so I would do another half, half in that area just to make sure I'm doing it correctly. Here, there's not much. You've just got, in that area, where's my charcoal? Hold on, here it is. All right, so in this area here, all I've got to worry about is this kind of goes upward and then back down to about here. And if I measure halfway, it's right about there. That halfway would be right here. And this falls right about there. And then this comes down at an angle. This falls this way. I'm basically sketching out the image very roughly so that way I can now focus in and create my art piece accordingly. But what this grid did for me is it helped me to make it larger. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Questions? Yes, no? With me? Okay. And then the next step, when you work with charcoal, the infamous circle, you're going to work with the side. Now, one thing about charcoal is it's really dark, and when you hit the surface, I would go slow. Okay, build up my shade accordingly. Now it starts off looking like hatching, but the more you go over it, the smoother it's going to appear. Okay. Now another thing to remember, I'm doing line. You could see the line. Okay, but when you come into the composition with the particular media, now I'm talking technique. Okay. You're going to come in slow and careful with your line. You see how I drew my lines on my actual paper? I drew them very soft, okay? I did not draw it in a way where I made a dark mark because I might need to change it. So when you work, my recommendation, go soft first, and then you could always hit it up in darkness later. Now here, you know, that infamous ball shape form that we've been talking about, you've been seeing everywhere, okay? So kind of the way we kind of teach so that we learn how to do our technique with this particular medium. This is charcoal. Another thing too, I've got two different kinds of charcoals. This is a pencil one, and just like the pencil itself, how it has different grades and values, like 6B, 9B, same too with this lead. This happens to be a 2B. There are darker ones. Now, I think I have over here another one that, yeah, I do. Okay, this one here, it's by Prank. And the thing about this one is that there's little ridges on it. And if you pull this string, this will sharpen the pencil, okay? So you basically pull down to the ridge that you'll notice on the pencil, and then you remove, and that's how you sharpen it. Now this particular pencil, the other pencil that I was using was a 2B. This is a standard one. This is probably a 4B because I believe, let me see. Yeah, it's a little bit darker. You're gonna get real dark tones with this particular one. And the cool thing about this one too is that you could extract it, which will help you to get very soft values. Now, after you're completely done, per se, with your image, and you wanna hit your highlights, okay, that's usually done at the end. And another thing that's done at the end is the tortillon. Tortillon is a blending stump. It's a rolled sheet of paper. I think I'll have them over there for you. If not, I'll put them out, don't worry. And basically what that tortillon does, it's pretty much like a paper. And what you do is at the end, when you're all done, you'll use that tortillon. This is, like I said, this is not a tortillon, but the tortillon is made up of paper. It's the same consistency as this. And not using your finger, okay? Please never use the finger. Instead, you're gonna use the tortillon, like I said, which is a rolled up piece of paper. I'll take it out at the end, okay? I never do that in the beginning. Now, another thing that you'll be doing at the end, okay, is you'll be doing your little highlights, okay? Which, it might happen here, okay? Another thing too, don't mix too much the medias together. I like it if you hit it and then softly fade it into the brown. Okay, that is a better, you could say, solution than to mix the two, okay? I would say even just leave the area brown so that way you don't have too much of that mixture going on. Now, and also don't forget, a little bit of that reflective light is probably, and you might even hit it up in this area here, but use the side. And like I said, using the side is so difficult because this instrument is made of wood, and when you use the side, sometimes the wood tends to hit up against the area, and just be careful. Remember, this is your highlight area, so that's going to be your brightest white. Make sense? Yes, no? Hello, hello? All right, so you basically see that smooth transition from the dark to the light using the charcoal medium, okay? Now, any questions? Questions? But you probably won't get to this part. Like I said, first step, measure. Do the math. Decide what size your art piece is going to be. Then the next step, don't go directly onto the paper like I did, but you would do it onto the white paper, the regular drawing paper. Do your entire drawing and then transfer it onto the good paper. That's what I would do, okay? Reason, because if you did it directly, you're gonna have a lot of erasure. Like right now, if I sit here and, I don't know, let's say I erase this area, you still see a little bit of it and it starts to damage the paper a bit, okay? Make sense? Yes, no? Oh man, and I got the green on here. Darn, I was gonna draw on there. Okay, any questions? Questions?